It is a brand new edition of Flyers Daily. It is a New Year's Day edition. It's a brand new year, and it is a Monday. So, a lot of things. This is what you call a confluence of events. It is a Mondays with Meltzer on the brand new day of a brand new year, 2024. Everybody have a great and happy new year and safe one as well.
Yep.
And joining us right now from PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com, it is Bill Meltzer. Bill, happy new year. The first one to say it, too, because my wife's been asleep since the second period like yours.
Yeah, same going on here. Happy New Year to you and yours, and now to our listeners.
Yeah, no doubt. The crazy thing is we spend New Year's pretty much every year watching Flyers, at least kind of after dark hockey, and it's been a tradition. But Bill, they've knocked out a lot of huge road trips before the second half, unofficial second half of the season even begins with 2024.
Yep.
They've got the California trip, by the way, the Alberta Clipper, Vancouver, Seattle, even Dallas, and the only one where they go out of the time zone the remainder of the season is one in Chicago that I think is a 7:30, and they have an 8:00 game against the New Jersey Devils for the Stadium Series. But a lot of the heavy lifting travel-wise is out the door.
Almost all of it. Minnesota, Winnipeg will be Central Time Zone.
Yeah.
And then other than that, after they play Edmonton, they're not out in Mountain or they're already done with the Pacific. So pretty much all Eastern time for most of the rest of the year.
Bill, let's talk about the game that took place last night, first and foremost, the Calgary game. I'd put out a tweet prior to the game that I remember when the schedule came out, I thought this was the toughest schedule spot of the entire season. And I was listening to 32 Thoughts, and I know Friedge and Jeff Marek were talking. I think it was Kelly Rudy that said, any team that comes out of the holiday break should not have to fly over 2 hours. The Flyers flew about 6.5 to Vancouver, then jumped the border in a back-to-back to go to Seattle, then jumped back over the border to play 3 and 4. And mind you, against a team in Calgary that played Wednesday and hasn't played since.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a really difficult spot for them to be in. I'm not surprised by the result. I am a little surprised by the resolve to the final horn, though.
Yeah. And I mean, it would have been really easy after the, after the 4-on-4 goal against Kadri's, because Gilbert's goal, that really, that was a kind of a backbreaker. You're going to the third period, tied 1-1. You're trailing by 1. You're still in the game, though. You're still a shot away, and then you give up a 4-on-4 goal like that, and it's just easy to get deflated and kind of mail in the rest of the game. They didn't, and that's one of the things. I know Torts wasn't in much of a mood to
excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, you come into the game, with really as extreme of a fatigue factor disadvantage as you're going to have.
Yeah.
And I mean, you don't ever want to use that as a built-in excuse, and nobody did, but they looked to me in that game like a tired team tends to look. They were sloppy. They were over-reliant on Ersson for long stretches of that game. Ersson was brilliant through the first 2 periods, absolutely brilliant, and it's the only reason they were leading 1-0. They could have easily given up 4 or 5 goals, in the first 40 minutes and been really out of the game or on the ropes. They found ways to get to the third period tied 1-1, largely through the goaltending. But I mean, Twitter all said many times it's a find a way league, and the Flyers really kind of came close to finding a way in a game that was going to be tough to win. Not only because, as you were saying, that they were, Calgary's only played once since Christmas. This is the Flyers' third game in 4 nights, and it was their first game since Wednesday for Calgary, and all at home. They've been at home this entire time.
Yeah.
So plus the Flyers, and every team goes through this at some stretch of the year. I don't know how much of the locker room is dealing with some kind of flu bug, but there's a lot of sick players in the team right now. Yeah, a lot of players are less than 100%. So I think you kind of come away from that game, philosophically, hey, I thought it could have been a lot worse. I thought the Flyers really, they weren't lacking for scoring chances of their own. Mm-hmm. To me, the resolve was there. There were points of the game where there's foot races, and the Flyers look like the tired team in the foot races, not getting some pucks first, losing some battles. The middle of the ice is open far too often for Calgary. I mean, that was one of the sloppier defensive games the Flyers have played.
Structurally, right?
Structurally. That was certainly lacking, which is, again, it's kind of par for the course. Now that if that happens in Edmonton, the Flyers are going to get their doors blown off. I mean, they're going to have to tighten things up in that game. But I think all things considered, to come away with a 4-3 loss, to hang in there literally to the final buzzer. You never want to make excuses for a loss. You never, there's only so many moral victories. There really aren't any. But by the same token, you could take the road trip so far, and I still think overall it's been a success, especially the win in Vancouver. So you take where the Flyers were at the end of last calendar year versus this calendar year, and it's a night and day difference.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of change that has taken place and movement in the right direction. And I've mentioned, Bill, they've gotten off the treadmill of walking but going nowhere, or walking forward perceivably, but you're actually moving backwards because the treadmill is moving faster than you're walking, and they seem to be doing that. I want to make a point real quick and ask you about this. I mentioned this on yesterday's pod. If it weren't for these two areas of the game where the Flyers have been so much better this year, I think they'd be in the 7th spot in the division. They'd be where Calgary is, frankly. And it's the defensive zone structure, the 5-man unit, the way they defend and how they defend less as a result, and then the PK. Not only, the 9 shorthanded goals, but also the fact that they have the 4th-ranked penalty kill on just raw numbers percentage-wise in the NHL. If they don't have the structure defensively, the PK where it is, and goaltending is obviously a big part of both of those things, they're sitting in the 7th. It's probably 6 to 9 standings points difference. That's how much defending and killing penalties matters.
For sure. And not so much last night's game we were just talking about, but I think that if you look at some of the recent weeks of the Flyers, you look at the underlying numbers, possession-wise, they've been moving backwards a little bit.
Yeah.
But they've when they've been in bend but don't break mode, they've mostly kept play to the outside. This was an outlier game where they were giving up the middle of the ice a lot. Last year, the Flyers were getting killed off of plays out of the corner. Mm-hmm. Sometimes plays up high, backdoor goals, which, backdoor goals, they're killers because your goalie most often can't stop them.
Yeah.
Unless the shooter makes a mistake and puts it into the goalie. And then the goalie starts cheating off the post to get over to the other side, and then something short side goes in. It's, those kind of things that snowball. On the whole, the Flyers have avoided that so far this season. It's why the Flyers have been in the top third of the league in team goals against. So I think that those two things absolutely. Defense, transition, offense. Flyers have scored a lot of goals in transition so far this year, and and obviously the PK has been great.
Yeah, I mean, both Flyers and Calgary went into that game last night having played 35 games. And each team averaged the same exact amount of goals per game, 2.94 goals per game. The difference in the record is 5 more wins for the Flyers and 10 more standings points, because the Flyers' goals allowed per game is 2.69 to Calgary's 3.23. Yeah. So I get, like, everybody wants to see goal scoring, and you're going to need more goal scoring, no doubt about it. But keeping the puck out of your net has been the harbinger. That's been the reason why they are where they are in the standings. Not because they're putting in 5 goals a game. That's unrealistic, I think, for this team at this point. So let's go to the next element of that conversation about putting the puck in the net, Bill. Where do we go with Cam Atkinson? I thought he actually played a really good game in Calgary. Yeah. I thought he was effective. He gets the assist on the 1 goal on the feed to Bobby Brink. He was getting fed a lot of minutes, and Travis Konechny obviously is very banged up, coming off that shot block and that hit late in the game against Seattle. And Atkinson got a little bit more playing time and I think situational use as a result. But the fact of the matter is Cam Atkinson needs to score goals, and it's been 21 games since he's done exactly that.
Yeah. And it's clearly in his head, as it would be for any player.
Needs one off the rump.
Yeah, well, that's how it's going to happen. Something off his shin pad, off his backside,
Yep.
you know, um, some scramble to net, and he jams in a third effort goal. I mean, nothing pretty. It probably won't be a snipe upstairs, but just one to relax him a little bit. There was a chance of a turnover in last night's game too, where I mean, you're used to seeing Atkinson bury some of those, and a fair number of those. So. Yeah, I mean, he was one of the guys who did seem to have energy in the game, and had scoring opportunities, and he's been getting scoring opportunities. If you look at now that December's completed, I think he was third on the team in scoring chances among the forwards. And I mean, he couldn't buy one, not one, all month. I think that more games such as this one though. There'll be a breakthrough at a certain point, but hopefully sooner than later. I mean, I feel like we've been saying that for any number of weeks now. But yeah, you need him scoring. You need to get Tyson Forster scoring again. Forster. I thought, although Torts didn't have a positive assessment of his game tonight. I think it was Smitty who asked him, and he said, "Nah, he wasn't going tonight. Most guys weren't."
But
But
I don't think
I
didn't like he didn't get pucks deep a few times. I think that's what he
yeah.
didn't like.
Well, that was a piece of it.
Yep.
But Forster still is ultimately a guy you want to need scoring goals, and I thought that he took a step forward offensively in this game because there were a lot of games where he wasn't getting any shots or only one shot or passing up open attempts, which is what he was doing at the very start of the season. So I mean that's another guy who you want to have scoring. You need Frost scoring a little bit more. I know he had goals in back-to-back games, one of which was a lucky one. But I mean these are your supporting guys. It can't always be Couturier and Atkinson. And you need some other guys scoring too. Kind of that every night a different guy stepping up mode, particularly while TK is banged up. You need some other guys stepping up. I mean, it's going to be scoring by committee all year, but it's not that they're without skill. They're just it's just that they don't have grade A scoring guys. They'll need a little more consistency out of Tippett. I think Tippett has had stretches where he's been really really good, and there've been stretches where I think they've needed a little bit more out of Owen. Tons of shots on goal. I mean, leading the team by a wide margin in that, and he's actually had the most scoring chances on the team too. Fewer pucks and miss the net and rim out.
Mm-hmm.
Tippett's a guy who can score from a variety of different spots in the offensive zone. One of the things with Owen, I'd like to see him do a little bit more is that a lot of his goals, and now that he's at a pretty his second full season, 2.5 seasons, 2.25 seasons with the Flyers now. One thing I've noticed about him is he creates a ton of his own scoring chances.
Yeah.
And he's actually good at creating some chances for line mates, but he's not a great get open and get a pass in the slot guy.
I agree. Yeah. To find a spot.
Yeah.
And then a player like Frost can know he's going to be at that spot and deliver him the puck. I'd like to see Owen. This may seem like a harsh term in the way I say it at first. I'd like to see him up the IQ of his shots.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't shoot to score. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but you got to shoot for the rebound. Yeah. I think you got to up the IQ of the shot. I thought I used to say it about Kevin Hayes a lot. I thought his IQ of his shots were very low. The Flyers would have a team hemmed in on the power play, and they're working the puck around, and he'd take a dead angle shot into the goalie's chest. Right. To me, that was like as low an IQ a shot as you can get.
Rather than rather than at the far side pads or rebounds to the open side of the net.
Exactly. Yeah, middle pad. Puck on pad. I always said that, and I think that's something that Owen Tippett needs to add into his game. And I guarantee Atkinson's never gone 62 NHL shots without scoring a goal. That's the number he's at right now. He had 7 shots in the Calgary game. Bill, let's look back at 2023 real quick, because it was a monumental shift of a season and an off season for the Flyers from, as you mentioned before, where we were on New Year's Day heading into 2023 and where we are on New Year's Day heading into 2024. And, the biggest storylines to me are obviously the shift from Chuck Fletcher to Danny Briere, Keith Jones. And I don't want to miss the element of from Dave Scott to Dan Hilferty, I think is a big one.
That's huge.
Obviously, Couturier returning and being the Sean Couturier numbers-wise, that was pretty much exactly the same Sean Couturier, actually a little bit more minutes played this year than he was in 1920 when he won the Selke. I mean, the numbers are exact points-wise and for the most part. And then you look at, obviously, the growth of some of the young players, the trade that didn't happen with Sanheim, but Hayes and Provorov being out of here and the effect that has. But I look back on 2023 and I still say the biggest thing in the entire thing that happened was the fact that the logo's not cut in half with the red line anymore. Yeah. It's the symbolic nature of a franchise that's refound its identity and the standard for which it operates.
Oh, for sure. And it's not only on the ice. It's
everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere in the organization. You can, it's sometimes hard to describe unless you're around it day in and day out.
I think the fans are feeling it, Billy, because they're showing up and they're entertained.
Yeah.
And
for sure. Well, it has, winning cures a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice going into the building and seeing most of the seats filled again. Hopefully it'll get back to a point where the seats are filled every game. But the energy level, which, it starts on the ice, of course. The ultimate example, and I'll use a baseball example. The Citizens Bank Park was a madhouse, the season, and because the Phillies were fun to watch, and they gave the fans a reason to stand up and cheer, a reason to feel like they were never out of a game if they were trailing. Then what happened in the last couple games of the playoffs? Fans were ready to cheer. We're just begging for something to cheer about, and it wasn't there because the bats went silent. Yeah. Same, and in hockey too. Flyers fans will jump right in, and the passion is there if you give them a reason to be passionate. And I think that they can sense that it's a different feeling on the team. They play different, and I think that I think it's something that the vast majority of time has been pretty entertaining to watch, and I think that that's something where fans can pick up on that. So if they keep on winning, that'll keep building too.
I think a deterrent for fans the last couple of years, Bill, was also the inconsistency of messaging. Yeah. If you wanted to know where the Flyers were going, what they were trying to do, and you wanted a different answer, just ask somebody else. You got different answers pending who you asked, whether that was John Tortorella, who was saying, hey, we're in a rebuild already, ahead of the curve. And there was just different answers being given. And that is confusing to fans. I don't know how it is in other cities. I don't care. But I think it's really important in this city to be upfront, honest, transparent as much as you can, and consistent in the message that you're. And we've seen Keith Jones out there and Danny Briere of late being right out there saying, we're in a rebuild. We're not changing anything because the team it's great that the team's performing well. It's giving us leverage and making our players more attractive and all of those things. But we're not changing what we're doing because of this. And I don't think there's ever been an inconsistency in that message. So there's no reason to doubt it until they give you a reason to doubt it.
No, for sure. And I think there's two components to it. You touched very eloquently on the messaging side of it. I also think it's the perception of the hockey people. Great. And I didn't feel that anybody was ever trying intentionally to deceive. But I think, let's say it, Chuck Fletcher looked at the 2019-2020 season where the team really exceeded expectations, and they got within a win of the Eastern Conference Finals with tweaks. Really, they didn't make big changes that year.
Lost Patrick, signed Hayes, brought in Niskanen,
right,
and Tyler Pitlick,
and that was it. Yeah. And that was the extent of it. And I think that it was always in Chuck's mind, just a couple tweaks here and there, we can get back to that again. And I think, after AV was replaced by Torts, and Torts is looking at what he sees there. He's like, no, this is going to take time.
Yeah.
It's so I don't think they were ever actually on the same page.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like anybody was trying to deceive anybody. I just think they looked at it differently.
Yeah, I think their evaluation of the situation was vastly different.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think what Tord saw, it was the reality that more was needed, and even with the Flyers a couple days ago, or in second place in the Metro, Torts has never strayed from his messaging either. Hey, listen, there are going to be bumps in the road. Mm-hmm. There are going to be times where maybe we lose several in a row, and the standings as closely packed as they are, there's going to be volatility. I mean, a couple of losses and you find yourself on on the wrong end of the playoff bubble. So I think Torts has his eyes open on that, but so did Jonesy and Danny, and I think that so I think that the messaging is consistent, but also the perception situation. I think everyone's on the same page
now. Bill, so 2024 is upon us. And it is the new era of orange, whatever. But what are the next steps? I mean, as we go into 2024 for the remainder of this season, I think there's still some big question marks. And, Owen Tippett and Morgan Frost, will they have the second half they had last year, being in that very tight divisional race? How does that affect things? Is the play of Travis Sanheim sustainable, and is this the player that he now is in his prime? The volatility of Hart's health with whatever he's dealing with, is that going to keep him out for periods of time, and does that expose Ersson to more playing time and maybe more than he's ready for? There's so many questions. Sean Couturier still has a question mark that's following him. Who's going to be dealt at the deadline? Is it going to be Walker, Sealer, Ristolainen, and anyone, none, all? I don't know. There's all these questions going into 2024, but I think they all lead kind of the same place, that this team is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and you can also, I think one of the most encouraging things is that these improvements have happened, with a lot in the pipeline that's not up at the NHL level yet.
Big time. That's a good point.
I mean, ultimately, the Flyers still don't have that number one kind of defenseman in the pipeline that anyone you could project as being that number one guy, but I think they have a top three guy in Bonk, for example.
Yeah.
I don't know when Michkov will be over, but but when he comes over, there's every reason to believe he's going to be a legitimate top line NHL player. There's really no reason to doubt that.
Yeah, there's a superstar written all over him.
And Cutter Gauthier has massive offensive upside. And
second in scoring in the World Juniors right now, and it's been pretty much all assists except for the one goal.
Which is the opposite of his reputation. His reputation is the shoot first kind of guy. If he can find other ways to contribute, and listen, there's still, for everybody, there's going to be a learning curve. I mean, in Gauthier's case, if he's going to be a center in the NHL, which is I think ultimately what the Flyers want him to be, he's going to have to get better defensively. I mean, I think sometimes he runs around the D zone, and that's and especially I mean, he'll be a Flyer next year, and Torts will still be here. Yeah, I think there'll be times when Cutter might sit for a while, or he might sit a game or two. Just always keep the big picture in mind, that the ultimate finished product is something to be excited about, because the upside is so high with him.
Yeah,
and other players as well. I think Emil Andre will be playing on the power play in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So, I think that going down to the AHL was a good thing for him this year. So you can look up and down the system, see that they have 2 more first-round picks this year. The
goaltending depth is stunning too.
Goaltending depth. I mean, they have the 18-year-old Zevragan in Russia, and
setting records.
He's saying he's already playing pro. He's playing in their version of the AHL at 18, and he has a goals against under 1.
Yeah, and he's 10-0.
Yeah,
I think his save percentage is north of .950.
Yeah,
which is
which is crazy. And and that's just one of the goalies in the system.
Yeah.
They have it wasn't even the first goalie they drafted this last year. So, it's pretty crazy. And Kolosov's a really good prospect. I
Yeah.
mean, somewhere along the line, one or two of these goalies are going to get traded, but
Yeah.
you're trading from strength, and that's the
And depth. Yeah.
that's the biggest thing when you're making deals, because then you can get what you want in return. You're not always, and also the other piece of it too, in getting what you want in deals, is where you have cap space to be able to take on a contract or two.
Yeah.
Because
Weaponize.
you're not going to max it out during a year. So ultimately, being able to do some of that, you pick up extra assets, you keep developing, you keep building, and the Flyers have only continued to move forward in those regards. So those are all things that one year further out from the end of 2023, those things are shaping up too. So it's really been a positive year in a lot of regards. It's probably too much to ask to jump up to contender status. In fact, it is too much to ask.
Yeah.
But the Flyers still are projecting as on a pace to be a playoff team.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, the thing about it too, having the goaltending depth in a league, a 32 team league, where, I mean, Bill, I would say out of the 32 teams, there's a solid 24, or not 24. There's about 20 of teams, 18 of the teams in the league that are dying for goaltending.
Yeah.
I mean, they are dying. And I think maybe you could even get more for prospect goaltending than you can known commodity goaltending that's going to cost too much money and too much in a trade.
For sure. And we're talking about contending teams too.
Big time.
Where they're
Samsonov just got waived.
Yeah, exactly.
In Toronto.
Exactly. Teams that are coming in as, contenders to come out of their conference.
Yeah.
And
Ronta got waived.
Yeah.
Jack Campbell's been, this crazy year.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And or a team like Carolina, their goaltending hasn't been very good this year. As an example. So it's it's pretty much a much of the league, and that's a good position to be in. To be able to leverage it and not have to rush into something either. You wait till the right deal comes to you. So
yeah. Last thing, Bill, there was a report that came out about Putin and contracts and some new rules in place. And I think it was kind of overhyped and some scare tactics were put in place. Can you explain the new rule and why it doesn't affect a guy like Matvei Michkov?
Yeah. And it's not even at this point a rule. Yep. Basically, what they want to do in Russia, and this isn't even a new story, for crying out loud. This story dates back to it first surfaced back either late August, early September.
Yeah,
it's really just a reiteration of what was said several months ago. So it's not even a new story. Basically, what they want to do is they want to tie players into contracts like the one that Michkov was tied into.
Yep.
Now, not at 16 like the Michkov was tied into, but they're really trying to prevent the youngest players from either coming over here to play in the CHL, which for a while you were seeing quite a few Russians come over to play junior hockey in Canada,
like Ivan Provorov did.
Provorov. Yeah, Provorov came over. Played Pee-wee hockey here, and then he played. Then he played the Western League. Yeah, they don't want their top prospects like Provorov at that age coming over playing junior here, and they don't want their youngest pros coming over and jumping into the American League. They now, if a guy's ready for the NHL, they're not stupid. They know they're not going to stop. They keep a guy down there forever. Yeah. So so when Michkov's contract is over, if no agreement could be reached, he'll still come over in 2026 at the latest. Again, if nothing can be done before that, so it's not going to put him in Russia for multiple more years or whatever the case might be. And now a guy like Zavragin, maybe they tie him into a contract that keeps him there at 23 or or whatever years old. But in the case of a goalie, of course, that's about when you want him coming over anyway. A lot of times. So.
You mean exactly when Sorokin and Shesterkin came over at 25 years of age?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really much ado about nothing. The best players will still come over, and in time. In some cases, I mean, listen, I said with Michkov, it's kind of unfair that he got signed at 16 because he didn't know what he was signing.
Yeah,
right.
That's way too young.
I mean, that was, but at 16, all you're thinking is, hey, oh my goodness, it's a pro contract, and but he's that rare case. I mean, he's a prodigy. I mean, most players need that time anyway. So the guys who can play and will be NHLers will be coming over in their due time. And really, I don't think it should affect, unless you feel that a player will be NHL ready sooner and can make an impact sooner, which is you would draft that player earlier anyway. I don't really see this as a huge story. I don't.
Yeah, and to compare it with Ivan Fedotov is ludicrous at best.
And then that didn't. I mean, that was a case where, it was.
He's 28 too, by the way. A lot different.
Yeah. It was in Russia. It's in any country that has a draft or mandatory military service. It's illegal to evade service.
Yeah. Rasmus Winen did it this summer in Finland.
Yeah, he was still putting. Yeah, I mean he was still putting in his time. They could spread it out, and in Russia, it's like if you're enrolled in I guess college classes or still receiving an education, and you can keep getting deferments on your military.
Yeah,
but but in the and I'm mind you, I'm not blaming Fedotov because so many players in Russia had fake cards saying they put in their time, and they hadn't. So he was simply doing what he was probably advised to do, and what any number of players had done, and he's made an example of. But his case is very different from a lot of these other players, and it's really, it's not a good example to say, oh well, it was him and it's other guys too. So.
Yeah, Bill, I don't mind the development of Michkov over there, and he comes over here in 2 more years on an ELC as a much more refined player. And then you got Cutter Gauthier kind of wrapping up in ELC for a year or 2 of that.
Yeah,
it really puts you in a good position for some really potent roster building, considering key members of the roster are going to be on entry level contracts. Oh
yeah. Yeah, that's so much of building. When you're trying to build an eventual Stanley Cup contender, because if you're gonna win a cup, you have to have a lot of luck too. It's a lot of good design, but it's also a lot of luck that's involved.
Yeah, that's why you see cup teams get picked apart, like Tampa got picked apart. Coleman, Barkley, Goodrow, key pieces, they all got picked out of there. As soon as Palat, all the money, as soon as those guys would do money, I got to go.
Yeah, exactly. Because those teams are already capped out. There's money to be made, more ice time to be had, and you have to and you have to be lucky in the draft too. When you can, obviously you have to click on your first round picks, but when Tampa picked Braden Point, for example. They didn't know what they were getting when they picked him. They weren't saying, oh well, we just hit a home run. This is a skill guy, and it all clicked for him. And that you're going to need some of those guys along the way. And
Kucherov in the second round is
second round
as it gets.
Yeah, and I always gave the example of Boston's long running top line. Yeah. Now obviously Bergeron is retired, but he was a second round pick, and Marchand was a third round pick.
Yeah.
And
Pasternak was 25.
And Pasternak was a late first round pick.
Yep.
Maybe
27.
And yes, it's good drafting, but it's also a lot of good luck.
Good development.
Yeah. So.
Marchand, it happened way later, but and go to McAvoy as well. He's 14th overall. I mean, you identify the need, you develop the talent properly, and you surround it with the right players, and look what you can do. No doubt about it. All right, let's wrap it up there, Bill. Let's get on to 2024. Read Bill's work at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com. And coming up tomorrow, we'll preview Flyers Oilers. They held Connor McDavid without a shot on goal the last time these two teams played, way back in on October 19th. The Flyers did that and beat the Oilers. So we'll preview that coming up tomorrow. So everybody join us then on a brand new episode of Flyers Daily.